Okay, let's take a look at how to use ColorRange to make a selection. Now, if you've got areas where there's lots of little bits of color, like say palm trees, we'll see how well this one works. See, when I zoom in really close, it gets a little low res around these edges, but let's play around with it and see what we can do with it. Now, every single photo, like I've mentioned before, is going to be different. So the selection method that you use is going to change. If I were to grab the quick selection tool, and just start to grab this, it's not really grabbing a really clean version of that. So that's not really the best one for me. Now, there is an automatic one up here called Select Subject that's been added into Photoshop in the last couple of years. Now, your top portion may look a little bit different because I am running the older version of Photoshop, but the idea is that did a decent job, but see how it still ended up missing a lot of the stuff on the inside, and it didn't even get this stuff over on this side. I'm just going to pull this one tree out instead of this entire thing. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that part, and I'm going to go ahead and hit mask. So you can see it didn't really do a great job for the whole thing, which is fine. Most of these selection methods, they just come from practice. And then if you can get it to be about 90%, then you can go in, whoops, then you can go in with your brush and get much more detailed. But I don't want to deal with all of the brush to get that blue. So let me show you a trick. First thing is, this is going to go back and forth between selecting the thumbnail. Remember, the thumbnail is just the preview of what's on that layer, and then the mask. Notice the white corners. That's letting me know which one's selected. So be very careful and watch when I do this. So if I'm going to try to select something that's on this layer, I need to actually have the photo selected. So I'm selecting the thumbnail. Now I'm going to come up here to the Select menu, and I'm going to go to Color Range. What ColorRange will do is when I use this eyedropper, I can click on the blue. And right in here, it's showing me what's been selected. So I'm going to click on a couple different areas just so you can kind of see what's happening. So what this is doing when I click in this general blue area is it's showing what's going to be selected. Now, it looks like it's trying to select some stuff inside of the tree as well. So I'm not going to really want that, but I'm going to show you what to do. If I increase the fuzziness, it grabs more. And for a lot of beginning students, they want to just, well, let's just go ahead and crank it all the way up. The problem with that is there are bits of color that are inside of the tree and inside of any of your selections, and it may not grab, it may grab too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to where I just see a little bit of the edge, and I'll click OK. Now I'm going to switch to the mask. So what I did is I selected using ColorRange on the photo, and now I'm going to click on the mask. I'm going to switch to my paintbrush. It's black. My opacity is a little too low from the last time I used it, so I'm going to move this up. And see what I'm doing is I'm just tapping around there, and that did a pretty good job. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect this. So I'm going to select and deselect. I'm going to press Control D or Command D on the keyboard if you're using Cameo. Let's see if I can remember where the deselect is in here. I'm so apologize. I'm so used to utilizing keyboard shortcuts, as are most designers, because it just speeds you up instead of having to search for stuff. But I want to be able to help, so let me see if I can figure out how to deselect. Probably the easiest way is to, because I can't find it in the menu right now, just take one of your other selection tools and just click somewhere off of the picture and it'll deselect. All right, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw a quick background on here just so I can see what I have selected. So I'm going to grab a color that's way different than everything else, like maybe purple. And I'm just going to fill that with the Alt backspace. Going to be Option backspace, or if you're using Cameo, you're going to grab the paint bucket and you can just click on that layer. Now I'm going to go back to the layer that's here, so I can kind of see it did a pretty good job, but I've got these kind of crusty edges right in here, and for a lot of this, that may not be that big a deal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the layer mask. I'm sorry, not the layer, the actual thumbnail. Then I'm going to go back to color range. And this time I'm going to click right inside of there. I'm going to play around with this. Ooh, that's too much. I'm going to try it there and see if it does too much, I can always undo. But now that I've got my brush, I just made a mistake. Notice what I did. So I used that brush. So I'm going to go to history. I'm going to go back up to color range. I'm still on the layer mask. I can't tell you how often that ends up happening. So be careful. Go to your mask. So select on here, go to your mask to paint. There we go. That's starting to look better. So this is the process. You're going through, you're making a selection. And then once you have the selection made, you're going to go to color range, select certain pieces, and then just make sure you're clicking off the side. And then you've got a much cleaner selection than having to go in really tight with a tiny, tiny little brush and painting.